All right, Phil, another week. I've been traveling in New York for the last couple of weeks, and one of the places I went to visit was Wall Street and the New York Stock Exchange, and I saw the bull, and it was freaking awesome. Like, just to be in and around that, my passion for into trading and stock market. It's a way I, small way I invest and do different things. But I came across the gentleman that we're going to talk about today, and it's Nassim Taleb. Now, I'd known about him before, but he's a trader. He's a former trader that turned into philosopher and author, scholar, and all that kind of stuff. But he's best known for bold ideas and risk on randomness and resilience and black swan events, if you will. And black swan events are things that are unpredictable, and they can be super tragic and negative, or they can be super awesome and fruitful. And just being in and around New York Stock Exchange and Wall Street and trading and all that kind of stuff, and aligns with some of the things that I enjoy doing. And I thought we would talk about one of many different philosophies that Nassim Taleb has, and it's Via Negativa, which is basically success through subtraction. And it's kind of a really cool theory. And I know he's got a lot of different theories of how to become successful in your own right. So what do you think about Nassim Taleb and Via Negativa for this week?
Dude, this is one of the things I love most about this podcast is when you sent me that text message, I got fired up, and know that your passion for investing and you and most of the listeners know my whole day, how I earn the majority of my living is through compliance on Wall Street and providing software for those folks as well. So quite familiar with Nassim Taleb, started reading as we started going back and forth, we've kind of got two of the main concepts we'll focus on as Via Negativa, I believe, was primarily in his book, The Black Swan. And then one of my favorite books, it really changed and reframed how I look at things, which is Anti-Fragile and the concept of anti-fragility. But I think, like, as we look at Nassim and we talk about defining success for ourselves, what a great topic. A guy that was set down a career on Wall Street, made a good living, but then realized, man, there's more to this. And I have a different take that I could build an entire offering around, and wrote 5 books. I think they're called the Incertos series. Those 5 books are quickly Fooled by Randomness, which is really the underlying theme for Taleb. He realized that he became obsessed with the hidden cost of ignoring randomness. So as we think about randomness and volatility, that's really the theme here.
And he talks about, specifically that book, he talks about how humans mistake luck for skill, where a lot of times people think it's not like, oh, you're not lucky. It's where preparation and opportunity meets, and that's where you get lucky. But he's saying that there really is a thing called luck. And I think preparation probably has something to do with it, but it's not so much skill oriented when you have this random acts, that happen in your life.
Absolutely. And hearing that a lot these days, right? Like, that ties into gratitude. Like, forget the luck that we're just where you're born on this earth and where you are geographically positioned out the gate, what parents you have. You don't have a lot of control on that. You get super spiritual, and other people will argue, been in this discussion before, that's point of contention, but not today. We're back to the logical. And since we're looking at a polymath statistician, even though he's a philosopher, we're gonna stay more left brain today. But spot on. Like, how often do people say, "Oh, I'm self-made. I'm XYZ," and there's all these events in your life with the butterfly effect that could have gone different ways. So, spot on. Just gonna rattle off the last 3 books before we jump in. The third was new to me, The Bed of Procrustes. And I'm going to have to dive into that one, because apparently it's quite a bit of aphorisms cutting through modern illusions and false certainty, which is what we just kind of said. We think these things are all in our grasp, and really they're random. The fourth being the book I'm most familiar with, Anti-Fragile, and 5, Skin in the Game, back to our theme of accountability, which has been ever present, especially in 2025.
Yeah, the importance of personal risk, right? Mm-hmm. Decision making, and like, okay, how am I going to, what's the stakes? What are the table stakes here when you're making those types of decisions? Those are all great books: Fooled by Randomness, Black Swan, Bed of Procrustes, Anti-Fragile, Skin in the Game. And as I was doing some more research into this guy, like the Black Swan one and the Via Negativa, basically hit me the most. And in a nutshell, Via Negativa, it's just really, it stands for the negative way. And why it matters is just subtraction is so underrated. And everyone thinks, well, why would I want to be negative? Why do I want to subtract things? Why do I want more and more and more? I need growth, growth, growth. And his idea is we're obsessed with hacks and productivity and programs and things that are going to make us wildly successful. But what if the answer is just doing less? Like, what if you just, things we've mentioned on the podcast before, create your best day. What does that look like? And just try and create that every single day and just focus on the things that matter. No matter what it is that you're doing in life, figure out what makes the most sense to you and just do those things. Don't continue to add. And so Via Negativa may sound strange and bad in a way, but he's right. I mean, we're here to eliminate the things that don't align and eliminate sometimes the relationships that don't align in order for us to continue down the path of growth. And so I think it's a really neat concept. It applies universally. It can go anywhere from health, finance, career, relationships, spirituality. I mean, everything. But his idea is that negative advice is more robust. And I kind of believe that, because how often do you hear, oh man, great speech, or oh man, great job. You killed that deal. You hear from your boss, like you sold great job hitting your quota last month, or, whatever it is. And like, yeah, that's all great. But it doesn't, like, it may pump you up to get some positivity, but that constructive feedback is what fuels your growth to be better and to take things to the next level. If people are always giving you positive advice and never giving you kind of the feedback and the negativity and the things that you're doing wrong and the things that you need to be working on, then we're never taking things up, and exploring what's possible and where the levels that we can take ourselves. So it's a really neat concept.
Absolutely. And I think that last one that intrigues me, the skin in the game, I love the tagline or blurb that I found that said, if you're not exposed to consequences, your opinion is irrelevant. I was like, whoa. And back to that, and what you said about Via Negativa, the first place my mind went was essentialism. And I have one coaching client that I'm working with on the side that this was the biggest impact, is this concept of essentialism and cutting away, and that we're not doing focus, we're not doing distraction. So if you want to focus, it's not about trying harder to focus. Of course, there are ways to do that, meditation, single tasking, etc. But how about we not do distraction? And it's easier to chop away at the non-essential, cleaning out the closet, making less decisions, just to have less, the pursuit of excellence through doing less. And I think that's where it's so cool, where this logic mathematician is really going philosophical and putting it into words on how we can approach doing more by doing less.
Yeah. And to give some examples, you nailed it. Clean out the closet, removing certain things. But like, if you're on a healthy shtick and you're like, okay, I'm going to add supplements and I'm going to add the gym and I'm going to do, I'm going to buy this equipment, I'm going to add more of these things to get stronger and healthier, when really the answer may just be removing sugar or eating whole foods, removing processed foods, right? Like you said, and, relationships. And maybe you're like, if I find the perfect coach for me, everything's gonna be wildly successful. Well, what if you just didn't surround yourself around toxic people and it gave you freedom to just focus on the things that you need to work on? And that perfect mentor isn't really the person that you need. And it's more about avoiding the things that are distracting you, as you said, deleting social media, right? Instead of searching for the new productivity app, just stop the scrolling, deleting social media altogether. And, omission's not failure. And sometimes it's just wisdom in disguise. And that's a quote that's inspired by Taleb. And so it gives you that freedom, man. Like when you have that cleanup, like cleaning out your closet, you have just this like monkey off your back, the weight off your shoulders type of thing. Like you just have this freedom to make choices, and great sound decision-making principles come to light. And it just makes life flow in a little bit easier way when you're not clouding with so many things. I got to go here, I got to go here, I got to go there, I got to go there. They're all the best ways for me to accomplish my goals. When it's matter of fact, like, let me look at all the things that aren't servicing me and what I'm trying to accomplish. And wow, now I've just focused on A, B, and C, and bam, I'm done. And I can just continue, going through that way.
It also ties back to something we talk about on the podcast a lot with the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions. et cetera. And I just was reading something from Dan Martell, who's made it more extreme and says the super outliers, it's 95-5, which is the ratio of our conscious and subconscious mind, and sent me down a rabbit hole. But by the way, side note, someone close to us is going through Dan Martell's coaching system, made the investment, pretty big investment, and is seeing a huge return within the first 3 weeks. So that's something we'll have to touch on.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool to hear. But on this, back to the Pareto principle and these outliers, the black swan events can be macro or micro. And you and I were kind of going back and forth on this before we jumped on briefly, is that there are big black swans that are rare high impact events that only seem obvious in hindsight. Like something wild happens and it's like, oh, once you backtrack and see what was building toward it, how did we not see that coming? One being COVID, not very easy to predict, not something you could really see coming until you really follow the paper trail. The 08 housing crisis, that one is easier to see. Clear as day when you look back at how subprime loans were being vested and circulated, pretty clear, but then it comes out of nowhere and has a huge impact on the entire globe. 9/11. These are large macro events that are black swan events and can adjust for the better or worse, but they're also in your personal life, an illness that comes out, the sudden loss of a job. All of these black swan events in our personal lives in the micro that aren't micro to us, individually they feel macro, are things that can come out of nowhere. And even though you can't see them coming, they can be a precipice and an opportunity. Back to your Oppo flow, opportunities everywhere. Which direction are we going to go with this for these key life events?
So you have these tragic events and these things. And I mean, even the housing crisis in 2008, right? I mean, that was a pretty crappy situation for a lot of people, but it was also a very, very fruitful situation for a lot of people. And Taleb was one of those, right? I mean, he made millions of dollars, in the market, and that was part of predictability for him. And he kind of saw this coming. I mean, it's one of the things he's known for. We've all seen that movie. What's that movie with Christian Bale, and there's a bunch of actors in it, and I forget what it's called. The Big Short. Yeah, The Big Short, right? Like you're shorting all the housing market, the banks and the stocks and all that stuff, and you're shorting these guys because you're seeing what's going on. Well, Taleb was one of these guys. And so black swan logic makes what you don't know far more relevant than what you do know. And it's almost like, if only I knew today what I knew yesterday, it would be, or if only I knew yesterday what I know today, it would be a wonderful life, is a quote that my dad always had written on his board. I don't know who said it, but to me, that was something that he always thought, like, you can't predict these things of what's going to happen today or tomorrow, but you can find ways to see it in the future. And it depends on what you're working on right now and your awareness for those opportunities. And that's really what the whole crux of it all is. That's how you can leverage black swan events to your advantage towards whatever success path that you have. But when you have these negative situations, like these tragic ones, it also gives you opportunities to figure out what means the most to you, what matters the most to you. So it's an interesting logic, and they are completely unpredictable. When you get them right and it's a positive black swan event, then it's you feel lucky, and that's probably what he talks about on the luck part of it. But in the end, it really does come down to preparation and awareness. But I do want to get back to the essentialism piece that you were talking about, and I think that really it's just that minimalist, that essentialist, that just focusing on those things that really matter the most. I think it allows you to take some risks, right? Like it allows you to, that skin in the game book that he wrote, and you can't give advice if you don't have the experience. But when you tone it down and just and have that freedom again to to help others in what you know with your experience, then you're almost like credible and you have the ability to give that advice. But if you're not, you can't give that type of advice to someone that you've never had the experience with. And it's like what there's another quote where it's like, don't take advice from people who've never been where you are.
Or aren't where you want to be.
Exactly. And so it's surrounding yourself with those people who are already above it or where you are. Those are the people you want. Those are the rooms you want to be in.
And this isn't going being a monk. That's where I think people can get hesitant. I don't want to be a minimalist. I like certain things, and that is excellent. But how about less things, but better things? Like, take all of the items that you have, and what are the ones that you're truly using that bring you joy, that are really enhance your life, and invest in really good things that you're going to have for a long time and ensure those things. How about less hobbies and bringing them into the ones that you enjoy the most and give you the highest return and decompression and improve you as a human being? This is where I believe, again, it's not about happiness. We've talked about that a lot on the podcast too, that happiness is overrated. It's fleeting. It's going to come and go. But fulfillment is in progression, and we can progress more effectively if we are working on less. And I believe this is one of the things we're missing. I know I was something I'm continuously working on. And every time we have this conversation, I think of the 17 Scotty Cameron putters that are in my closet, or I think both of us have the problem and probably have over 40 to 50 hats, just like the ones we're wearing right now. And that's a little bit out of alignment, but I'm telling you what, it's a much higher progression than it was in the past on just having too much random shit, quite honestly.
Yeah. Too much like actual stuff in your house. Like there was that Netflix series that you had brought up, I don't know, a while ago. We talked about it a few times, but I think there's like 50,000, or maybe it's a small number, it's probably bigger than that, items in your house. For like the average household has tens of thousands of items. Like, who needs that much stuff? And it doesn't take a lot to, like, you open up a drawer and you've got probably 1,000 items of junk in there, you know? And so it's like that piece where it's like just decluttering life, but the visible aspect of your house.
And if you start pulling on this thread, and I'm sure Taleb would be great to have on to chat through this, but then you get back to, well, we're in a consumerist society, a capitalist consumer society. So that if we stop buying all this stuff, how does that impact down? Right. The economics is interesting, but that's not why we're here today. I'm diverting us off path because I want to make sure we get to anti-fragility, because when we did the superpowers episode a while back, and I just think there are things in this life that are superpowers, and mine were sales, meditation, and jujitsu. There are more than that, but those are just three that have such compounding returns once you learn the skill set. But this one might be the most of all in life as a whole in regard to anti-fragility. And the concept is something that is anti-fragile benefits from stress. So the easiest concept is a muscle. You stress a muscle, it expands, more blood flow and nutrients go to said muscle. As it recovers, it grows. Muscles are anti-fragile. The same thing it goes for businesses and entrepreneurs. As you entered entrepreneurship, every challenge that came your way, you were fragile when you started. You had some frameworks, you had some support, but you were fragile. As those obstacles and stresses came at you when you were building Journey, you and Jamie, you grew under that. You gained skills, you gained experience, and you gained the skin that was tough enough to handle more and more challenges. So this anti-fragility, where every obstacle comes to you, you actually absorb it and become stronger, may be the biggest superpower there is in a very demanding existence.
100%. You nailed it. I mean, I think it goes for any listener here that's an entrepreneur or business owner or really just challenging themselves on purpose. It doesn't even have to be in business. When we started the Phoenix location, the first franchise out of Fort Collins, it was like 0 clients. It was, and we weren't even slinging small business payroll. It was all brand new. And so we were super fragile, but we just had this kind of blind confidence, if you will, of that there was no plan B. We're going to make this work. And it was more about what what he talks about in Anti-Fragility and subtraction and all that, it's knowing more about what is wrong than what is right. Like, sure, we knew a lot of things that were right, but we didn't know. We knew for sure what was wrong. We knew what we couldn't do as processors. We knew what we couldn't do as salespeople, what we couldn't do in order to serve the client. Like, we weren't going to wrongfully do something to a client on purpose or anything like that. So we knew those things, and that's the framework. Okay, we're not going to do these things, so we're just going to go and learn how to do everything that's right. So that negative knowledge was more robust because we had this foundation. We weren't going to try and cut corners. We weren't going to try and get ahead of the game by being unethical or anything like that. It was purely a focus of how can we do everything in our power that's right in this industry for this client, for this market, without any experience per se. And zero clients and a little bit of support, but it was like all of us just go. So that's where that kind of idea comes from. It's knowing more about what is wrong and having that as your baseline of you won't cross that line, and then figuring out what is right from there. So having that negative knowledge is just far more powerful for you to set your foundation and lean in on. And then it's that blind confidence, if you will, that no matter what, hey, I'm going all in on this. And no matter what happens, there is no plan B, or even if that plan B, I can't see it right now, I'm going to pivot and learn and figure it out and then continue working, but I'm not going to run and hide. So that was a good story or example that you just provided there. Entrepreneurship nails that right on the head.
And think about, getting back to macro, think about just evolution as a whole, and don't know your beliefs on creationism versus evolution, et cetera. But we can't argue with the fact that we have developed from some other being, wherever that starting point was. I guess you can't argue it. But just in general, the way that a plant has to grow from one seed and push through the ground, a bamboo shoot, nurtured, and the resistance it has to go through to produce such a strong and powerful wood to be used. Animals in nature, with each offspring, each generation that's produced, how they adapt to their environment and become stronger to the elements. Us as human beings passing on our genetics. You go back to the beginning of time, follow your ancestry back, the amount of traumas and challenges and things that your ancestors have cleared from you generation by generation. We are anti-fragile by nature, just because of our existence. As you trail back that lineage, that's about as macro as it gets in regard to being anti-fragile, is just the progression of life on Earth in general.
Yeah, it's surviving. It's all of it, right? And it's as we evolve and continue growth as a species in a way. At the end of the day, I think this is a really cool topic. It was neat to dive in. We gave listeners just a high level overview, but Taleb, he blends philosophy, mathematics, and real life experience that gives us tools for navigating an uncertain and chaotic world. And so that's kind of what we want to share as we learn these things, and these people out there in the world that are focused on these ideas. We want to give you these frameworks, and it helps us personally, but hopefully it helps you listening to these episodes, as these frameworks challenge conventional wisdom, and they offer grounded and often contrarian wisdom, especially useful for anyone trying to succeed, without losing their footing.
Where are you fragile right now, Stephen?
Right.
Where are you fragile?
I am not, man. I am ready to roll. I'm in. Life is good. Life is good right now.
Not buying it.
All right. Well,
I'm buying that life is good.
Maybe it's because I'm in upstate New York right now, focused on 12U baseball in Cooperstown, where there's not a lot of big decisions that are going on. I just kind of am floating along through the week, watching amazing, fun baseball with my son and family. So, maybe that's what it is, but
you've earned it. And that time with the family will make you feel bulletproof. So I love to hear that.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit you back before we end. You threw me for a loop asking that question.
Yeah. You didn't answer it.
I answered it. I said, I'm not. I'm good.
Well, where am I fragile right now? I am fragile. I'm in an in-between stage in regard to having a coach and coaching myself. And that dichotomy itself has leaned toward, obviously, coaching myself. But I would say some indecisiveness, which I value at a high level on certain things like that. That's not the only example right now, but I'm going to go with decisiveness, which after calling this out for the whole world to hear, will obviously be ever present on making some decisions a little bit quicker, sticking with it. And then to the theme of this podcast, pivoting and dealing with the consequences of those decisions or the benefits as we go on. But I guess I should have had a better answer since I put you on the spot.
No, I mean, I think that was a pretty vulnerable answer. Like, I don't think either one of us were expecting that type of question, but I gave some really good advice to a friend of ours. And, it was a bigger, tougher decision, not necessarily bigger or tougher or whatever, but it was like, he had been committed to something for a long period of time. And it was like every year this thing happens and he always is committed to it. And then this new opportunity came his way and he was torn. He was like, he couldn't do both. And so it's like, which route do I go? And it was a spur of the moment type of conversation I was having with him. And the way I've always kind of looked at things was, well, look at yourself 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. Like at the end of the day, what is happening in our lives right now is a blip on the radar to the grand scheme of overall life, but it does put us in spots that will become pivotal moments in our lives. So which one of those decisions, if you say yes to this one versus yes to that one, when you look back 10 years from now, which one are you going to look back and say, damn, I am so glad that I did this. If the other one doesn't make you say, damn, I am so glad I did this, then don't do that one. And when you're in that pickle and you're not sure which route to go, I kind of try and remove myself from those situations and put myself in a future state of what would I be most proud of, or what would I regret if I didn't do that? And it's hard when you're in that moment right then and there and you feel torn, and especially if you might feel like you're going to let people down. At the end of the day, whatever decision you go with, the people in your life that matter the most are going to support you no matter what. And so, those are tough calls, man. Like I think you just, in your case, not giving advice or anything, but I think it's just one of those things you kind of just keep progressing, keep working at it, and it'll become clear as day. And I don't know if that's a rush decision to make, but I think you test the waters one direction or the other, and it'll become clear for you.
That's excellent advice. And it's wild out there right now, listeners. We've got some friends we're helping through some things. We're helping each other through some things. Let us know what you're working on, what you'd like to hear about. And if we don't have the answers, we'll find someone that is qualified and have them on the podcast. So we'll be back at you next week. Thanks again for tuning in. And the Flow Bros are out.